Hey guys, tonight we slip quietly into the sandals of a Roman legionnaire. You're not a general, not even an officer, you're just one of the thousands of regular soldiers who make up the backbone of Rome's mighty army. And it's still dark. Very dark. You lie on a scratchy straw-stuffed mattress inside a cramped leather tent, pressed up against 7 other snoring, occasionally groaning grown men who all smell like salted pork and damp wool. The air is thick with the scent of old sandals, sweat, and last night's lentils. The camp is quiet, for now. But that won't last long. You blink up into the shadows of the tent's low ceiling, where your helmet hangs by a leather thong. The world outside is still cold and misty, and the occasional clank of metal or snort of a nearby mule punctuates the silence. You stretch a little, quietly, trying not to jab your tentmate Lucius in the ribs again. He bites. This is your life. You are a cog in the giant, relentless machine of Rome. And you probably won't survive this career path. Statistically speaking, you'll either get skewered in some faraway province, catch a charming parasite from undercooked boar, or just vanish in a marching accident, like that one guy who fell off a bridge and no one noticed for 3 days. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and your local time down in the comments, let me know where you're listening from tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're not awake yet, not truly. You hover in that gray fog between dreams and daylight. There's a brief moment, just a few seconds, where your brain tries to pretend you're not a Roman legionnaire. That this isn't your life. That maybe you're back home in a quiet Italian village, lounging under vines, sipping watered-down wine, and listening to your uncle tell the same 3 stories about fighting in Hispania. But no. Your back reminds you where you are. The stiffness in your spine, the crick in your neck from sleeping twisted to avoid Gaius's flailing elbow, and the gentle, persistent itch of flea bites along your calf, all very real. It's nearly dawn in the Castra, the Roman military camp that's become your world. Like all proper camps, it's laid out like a grid, planned with surgical precision. Historians still argue whether the uniformity of these camps was about efficiency, discipline, or just the Romans' obsession with making everything look like an Excel spreadsheet come to life. But here, from the inside, it feels like a prison built by architects with a ruler fetish. Each tent holds 8 men, forming a contubernium, your closest comrades. Or at least the ones you tolerate enough to share sleep, food, sweat, and occasionally lice. There are rows and rows of these tents, stretching across the camp, forming what the officers like to call a temporary city of war. You call it home, mostly because you don't have a choice. You roll onto your side, trying not to breathe too deeply through your nose. The smell of the camp is robust. Somewhere between smoked meat and wet goat. The floor of the tent is dirt, packed hard from so many feet, and faintly damp from last night's dew. Your cloak is bunched beneath your head, your makeshift pillow. A luxury, if you squint hard enough. Someone stirs beside you. Lucius, maybe, or that new guy who never remembers to unstrap his sword before lying down. There's always one. You listen to the rustle of fabric, the scrape of someone scratching their beard, the distant, rhythmic thud of a guard's footsteps passing outside. For a moment, it's almost peaceful. But your peace is shattered by the sound you've come to dread, the bocina. The curved bronze trumpet lets out its first moaning call of the day, and every bone in your body wants to scream back in protest. You groan softly, because that's all you can do now. Complaining is useless. The trumpet always wins. You sit up slowly. Every joint protests like you've aged 3 decades overnight. You reach for your belt, the wide leather cingulum that digs into your waist when you sit too long. Your tunic is rumpled and smells faintly of last week's rain. You give it a shake and slide it back over your head, wincing as the fabric clings to old bruises and half-healed cuts. A wooden peg on the tent post holds your armor, still dented from last week's training. It hasn't gotten lighter overnight. Your helmet, the Galea, is cold to the touch as you slide it under your arm. Later, you'll put it on properly, but for now it rests like a burden you're not quite ready to carry. Outside the tent, the sky is still dim, tinted with the purples and blues of early morning. You step out barefoot, feeling the chill of damp earth seep into your toes. Around you, other legionnaires are emerging from their tents in similar states of half-conscious dishevelment. Some stretch. Some scratch. One guy is already muttering curses to Mars under his breath. You don't blame him. You grab your sandals, your caligy, from the peg and shake out a beetle. Always with the beetles. The leather straps are stiff with old mud, and the metal hobnails on the soles click against the stone path as you start toward the main road. The ground is cold. You miss socks. Socks haven't been invented yet. Or if they have, no one's given you any. The road leads to the Principia, the heart of the camp, where officers are already buzzing around like angry bees. There's movement at the Sacellum, the shrine to the standards. The sacred eagle standard of your legion guarded day and night, polished more often than any of you wash. It gleams faintly in the torchlight, holier than any relic. Some say that if the eagle falls in battle, Rome falls with it. Which, if true, makes your job a lot more stressful. But you're not on eagle duty. You're just on breakfast duty. Your stomach grumbles as if on cue. You remember what's waiting: leftover barley porridge, a hard biscuit of panis militaris that could double as a weapon, and a lukewarm drink of watered wine that tastes faintly of vinegar and regret. Not exactly a feast, but it's calories. You pass the communal latrine, and, you know what, let's not talk about the latrine just yet. We'll save that experience for after breakfast. All you need to know is, sponge on a stick. You walk faster. You reach the mess area, where a few fires are still smoldering. Someone's pouring barley gruel into small wooden bowls. The steam curls upward, and you allow yourself a moment of optimism before you taste it and instantly regret that emotion. It's lukewarm. Bland. Possibly cursed. You sit on a log bench beside Marcus, who's already chewing with the slow, dead-eyed rhythm of a man who's accepted his culinary fate. You nod at each other. No words needed. Just the shared misery of morning food. Someone tries to crack a joke about the quartermaster using sawdust instead of flour again. It's not funny. You laugh anyway. It's too early to fight. Across the camp, a group of recruits is being shouted at for forgetting to oil their shields. Again. The centurion's voice is loud, clear, and deeply unimpressed. You sigh. That's your cue. You gulp down the last of your vinegar wine, wipe your mouth with the back of your sleeve, and rise slowly. Armor still to strap on. Inspection to stand through. Orders to receive. A day to survive. Another day begins. And you're still alive. Which, by Roman standards, is honestly a pretty good start. The trumpet calls again. Louder this time. No mercy, no snooze button, just the cold, metallic blare of obligation ripping through the half-light of morning. It's not music, it's a threat dressed as tradition. The bocina echoes off every wooden post and leather tent flap, and you feel it in your chest before your ears even register the sound. There's no escaping it now. You rise, slowly, because that's the only speed your joints allow. Your knees crack like old amphorae, and your shoulders complain from yet another night curled like a salted fish. There's no privacy, no personal time. The camp is already humming, even in this liminal hour between, should be asleep, and, definitely too awake. All around you, your fellow legionnaires are emerging from their tents like sluggish beetles, scratching, yawning, muttering. Some already have half their armor on, overachievers or insomniacs. Others still wrestle with tunics twisted the wrong way, belts tangled like they fought a snake in the dark. You see a man with his cloak tied around his waist like a skirt. No one corrects him. It's too early to care. Your first mission of the day, latrines. Ah yes, the latrines. The glory of Roman sanitation. You might expect some dignity here. After all, the Romans prided themselves on engineering, civilization, and public works. But dignity is not what greets you. Instead, it's a long stone bench with strategic holes, lined over a drainage channel that carries your daily regrets away. There are no partitions. No stalls. Just you, a dozen comrades, and the haunting eye contact of someone trying to make conversation in the worst place imaginable. You approach with caution. The stone is cold. Very cold. The kind of cold that wakes your soul faster than any trumpet. You perch gently, adjusting your tunic, trying not to look left or right. A man next to you makes a joke about a centurion's breath being worse than the trench. You force a smile. Humor is survival. So is not breathing too deeply. Now comes the matter of hygiene. There's a communal sponge on a stick, the tersorium. Shared. Reused. Dunked in a bucket of water with vinegar between users, which is somehow both reassuring and horrifying. You hesitate for a moment. Some scholars suggest each soldier may have carried his own sponge, like a grim version of a toothbrush. Historians still argue whether that was standard practice or just wishful thinking. You, unfortunately, drew the short stick today. Literally. Done with that particular ritual, you make your way toward the small wash station. A simple stone basin, cold water trickling in from a clay pipe. No soap, of course, that's a luxury for civilians. You splash water on your face, rubbing your eyes with calloused fingers. The cold bites, but in a good way. It clears the fog. Sort of. You reach into your gear satchel for what passes as dental hygiene in this time, a thin stick, chewed at one end to fray the fibers. A miswak, if you like, or just chewy twig. You gnaw at your teeth, scraping gently. There's no mint flavor. Just bark. Dry, bitter bark. And yet, somehow, it's become part of the ritual you weirdly look forward to. The illusion of cleanliness. The small comforts. A few others stand nearby doing the same. One soldier proudly displays a tooth he dislodged, rotten to the root. He laughs. So does everyone else. You offer a half-hearted grin, hoping none of your molars are next. From somewhere down the camp's main avenue, a mule brays, startling a recruit who spills half a basin of water onto his sandals. The officer in charge of morning discipline snaps a glare in his direction, arms crossed, mouth tight. That's Decimus. He hasn't smiled since the last emperor died, and you're fairly certain he eats gravel for breakfast. He's in charge of making sure everyone looks presentable, which is funny, considering everyone smells like they fought a wet wolf and lost. You retreat back to your tent to gather your gear. The sun is barely up, a weak golden sliver rising over the eastern palisade, but the camp is fully awake now. Fires crackle to life, tents flap open, and orders are already being barked from 3 different directions. Someone drops a helmet and curses. Another stumbles out still barefoot, hopping from foot to foot on the cold gravel. Your armor waits for you like a judgment. Lorica segmentata, metal strips riveted together over a leather underlayer. It's not light. It's not comfortable. It pinches in all the wrong places and makes bending over feel like a death sentence. You hoist it over your shoulders with a grunt, fastening the leather straps one by one. The metal clinks and clatters. There's a familiar weight to it now, like a second, poorly designed skin. Your tunic bunches beneath the plates, and no matter how many times you tug it, it always manages to ride up and chafe somewhere awkward. You grab your belt, more than just decoration. The cingulum militare is a status symbol, a functional girdle, and a jangly mess of dangly bits all in one. You tighten it until it cinches uncomfortably around your gut. Fashion, in Rome, is pain. You pull on your cloak, now a little less damp than when you last folded it. You secure your gladius at your side and sling your shield over your back. A rectangular slab of wood and iron, the scutum is curved to hug your body, or crush your spirit, depending on how many hours you've carried it. As you leave the tent fully geared, your breath fogs in the morning air. The sun, now a little bolder, glints off rows of helmets as more soldiers finish their morning routine. You spot a few rookies trying to adjust their armor straps with their teeth. One still asking whether the left sandal goes on the left foot. It's going to be a long day. There's a moment before roll call. A beat of stillness. You lean against a post, eyes half closed. A bird flutters overhead, some defiant sparrow that didn't get the memo about the war effort. You envy it. Then the centurion's voice cuts through the camp like a whip. Form up. Groans ripple across the rows of tents like waves. You fall into line beside your tentmates. Gaius still smells like he bathed in garlic. Lucius, next to you, winks and mutters, "Bet I can get through today without sweating." He cannot. No one can. It's Rome. The centurion paces before you, eyes scanning for dirt, rust, unfastened belts, signs of apathy. You stand as straight as your armor allows, praying your last-minute polishing job hides the dent from that time you used your breastplate as a stool. He stops in front of one soldier and scowls. "Rust," he says flatly, then moves on. That's it. No follow-up. Just the word. The man looks like he's been personally exiled. And now the orders come. Marching practice for the 3rd cohort. Weapon drills for the 1st. Road repairs for the unlucky souls of the 5th. You're in the 6th cohort today, which means you'll get the ever-popular miscellaneous duties, also known as whatever the centurion makes up on the spot. You don't mind. It beats latrine trench duty. Barely. Before dispersing, you look up one more time. The sky is brighter now, almost cheerful, but you know better. It's the kind of cheer that lies. The kind that lulls you into thinking today might be easier than yesterday. It won't be. You hoist your shield, adjust your helmet, and begin the long walk toward whatever miscellaneous means today. Around you, Rome's army moves as one, an iron machine fueled by porridge, pride, and poor decisions. It's still early. And your day has only just begun. You know the phrase, "suit up," sounds glamorous in future centuries, like putting on a crisp tuxedo before saving the world. But here, in your grimy corner of the Roman Empire, suiting up means an elaborate dance with stiff leather, chilled metal, and the occasional rash. Your armor isn't just gear, it's your entire identity. A hot, heavy, uncomfortable identity that makes your armpits wish they'd been born on someone else. Let's begin with the underlayers. Your tunic is scratchy, woolen, and designed by someone who clearly had never worn one. It clings in all the wrong places and sags in others. Some men customize theirs, shorten it, cut slits for mobility, or tie belts to pull the fabric up out of the way. You've tried it all. Nothing works. The wool itches. It always itches. Historians still argue whether early tunics were naturally dyed or just stained with the tears of underpaid weavers. You believe the latter. Next comes the armor, the lorica segmentata. If you're lucky enough to be issued one, and you are, it consists of overlapping iron strips riveted to leather straps. The pieces wrap around your torso like a metallic hug from someone you don't like. The front fastens awkwardly. You always need help tightening the back. You and Lucius have a system, you do his, he does yours. Except he's still half asleep, and now you're cinched unevenly. One side digs into your ribs. The other flaps slightly. You'll regret this by midday. You remember the first time you put it on, fresh from training. You thought it made you look formidable. Heroic. Like a miniature god of war. Now it just makes you feel like a clanky barrel full of laundry and old regrets. The helmet, the galea, goes on next. Bronze, with cheek guards that never sit right. You adjust it again and again. It shifts when you turn your head. It pinches when you breathe. It never quite fits. One Legionnaire added wool padding inside his to soften the blow of training swords. Another just lines his with hay. You tried that once. Got fleas. Now come the sandals, the caligy. They're more like military flip-flops on steroids. Thick-soled, hobnailed, and designed for miles and miles of glorious Roman marching. They offer minimal protection, no arch support, and a remarkable ability to collect rocks. Your heels are already sore just thinking about them. You adjust the straps around your calves. Too tight and you lose circulation. Too loose and they rub until your legs look like you've been attacked by very orderly cats. Your last pair broke during a march, and you had to finish the last 2 miles barefoot. You still flinch at pine cones. Then there's the belt, the cingulum. Not just for holding up your tunic, it carries your gladius, the short sword every legionnaire is expected to master. The belt has metal plates that jingle with every step. It's like being followed by your own annoying musical accompaniment. Some soldiers think it sounds intimidating. You think it sounds like a goat playing castanets. Your gladius is practical, brutal, and dull from yesterday's drills. You'll have to sharpen it again soon. One end of the blade is slightly bent from parrying too many wooden practice swords. You tell yourself it adds character. Like a chipped tooth. Then, the scutum, your shield. It's massive, curved, and feels heavier every day. The leather surface is painted red with the symbol of your legion, but half of it has chipped off. It smells faintly of mildew. You rest it on your foot while you tie the final strap of your sandals. It topples sideways and smacks your shin. Again. That bruise has its own personality now. You take a step back and look at yourself, or what you can see of yourself, reflected faintly in the polished surface of someone else's helmet. You are armored, armed, and as ready as anyone in your condition can be. You still feel like yesterday's leftovers, but at least you match. Nearby, a few recruits are struggling to don their kit. One's wearing his chest plate backward. Another forgot to buckle his belt and is now hobbling after his fallen sword. A third looks completely normal, except he's missing his helmet. He'll notice eventually. Or the centurion will. You make a mental checklist: sword. Check. Helmet. Check. Annoying jangling belt. Check. Deep existential doubt. Double check. Your tentmate Marcus appears beside you, patting down his cloak like he's searching for invisible lint. "Think we're marching today?" he asks without looking up. "I hope not," you reply. "My armor's still wet from last week." "It'll dry with your tears," Lucius chimes in from the other side, adjusting the chinstrap on his helmet. You grin despite yourself. There's something about this miserable routine, shared by all, that bonds you more deeply than any oath ever could. Someone shouts your name. It's your decanus, the head of your 8-man group. Time to fall in for morning inspection. Again. You shuffle into line. The armor clinks with every step. The shield digs into your back. The sun is now fully up, illuminating the camp in that sharp, unforgiving morning light that reveals every smudge, stain, and missed buckle. The centurion stalks down the row. His eyes are hawk-sharp, scanning for the smallest irregularity. He stops beside the man to your left, frowns, and taps the edge of the man's helmet. "Crooked," he mutters, before moving on. He stops in front of you. Looks you up and down. Says nothing. Then walks on. You exhale, slowly. That's a victory. And now comes the moment you dread, the daily shield shuffle. You're ordered to raise your shields and hold them in formation. It's not an attack drill, not yet, just a posture test. But it still hurts. Your arm starts to tremble after 30 seconds. Your shoulder aches after a minute. You've done this 100 times. It never gets easier. The centurion circles you like a shark with a clipboard. Raise your left arm, he barks. Square your stance. Lock your elbow. Not like that, like you mean it. You adjust. Again. He taps your shield with a staff. Hard. It reverberates through your whole body like a slap from Jupiter himself. You flinch. Don't flinch, he says. A barbarian won't warn you first. Thanks for the tip. At last, the formation drill ends. You lower your shield with a groan. Someone to your right drops his with a clang. The centurion's gaze snaps toward him like a ballista bolt. You try to look very, very still. The rest of the morning stretches ahead of you. Drills, more armor adjustments, maybe weapon polishing if you're lucky. But for now, you get a brief pause. Enough time to loosen your belt slightly, take a few deep breaths, and enjoy the illusion that you're not made entirely of chafed skin and bruised muscle. You glance at your hands. Calloused, rough, scarred from countless hours of sword practice and hauling supplies. Not the hands of a philosopher. Not even a proper farmer anymore. But they're yours. They've kept you alive this long. You give them a flex, then ball them into fists and rest them on your hips. Another day, another dent in the armor. Your stomach growls, again. You've already tuned out the latest round of barking orders, your mind drifting toward food. Or what passes for food in a Roman military camp. Breakfast is next, and while no one's exactly excited, it's still a highlight, simply because it doesn't involve holding a shield, dodging a training sword, or getting barked at by someone whose eyebrows have permanently merged into a single angry line. You trudge toward the mess area in a loose line of half-awake, fully armored grumps. The cold gravel crunches under your caligy. Around you, the camp is waking up faster now. Fires crackle to life. Horses stamp and snort. Wooden carts creak past, guided by auxiliaries and servants. A mule screams behind a tent, startling a recruit into dropping his entire shield. The sound is concerning. Possibly demonic. No one investigates. The mess setup is simple: long wooden tables, uneven benches, smoke hanging low. The air is thick with the smell of charred embers, damp wool, and something faintly sour that no one's bothered identifying. A large clay cauldron simmers over the main fire pit, bubbles rising slowly from a stew-like gruel that looks as excited to be eaten as you are to eat it. You grab your wooden bowl, same one you've been using for weeks now, stained and chipped, and join the queue. In front of you, Marcus pokes at his own portion with theatrical suspicion, turning toward you with his usual deadpan expression. "Guess what's for breakfast," he says. You glance at the bubbling pot. Hope. Nope. Gruel. Extra squishy today. You step forward. The cook, a man whose apron tells a tragic tale of forgotten stains and bad decisions, ladles out a generous lump into your bowl. It lands with a wet schlock, steaming faintly like a creature trying to escape. There, he grunts, wiping the ladle on his sleeve. Luxury portion. You nod solemnly, accepting your fate. To the side, a basket of hard biscuits, Panis militaris, the immortal enemy of dental health, awaits. You grab one that seems only moderately fossilized. It smells faintly of wood, maybe lemon. Or mold. You can't tell anymore. These biscuits are so tough they've outlived 2 emperors. You once saw one crack a guy's incisor during a march. He just swallowed the tooth and kept chewing. Roman grit, they call it. You settle onto a bench beside Lucius and Gaius. Both are chewing with the slow rhythm of men who've made peace with mediocrity. "This has texture," Lucius mutters, examining the consistency of his bowl with the grim curiosity of a scholar dissecting something he regrets. "That's the spoon," Gaius says, flicking a splinter from his lip. You dip your biscuit into the gruel to soften it. It resists. You bite anyway. It gives way with a crunch that echoes up your jaw into your soul. It tastes like wet cardboard and ambition. Absolutely none of which you have left this early in the morning. The soldiers around you speak in low tones. There's a strange peace to breakfast. A sacred silence, even when surrounded by 100 men eating slop in synchronized despair. Someone nearby cracks a joke. Centurion walks into a tavern. Bartender says, "Why the long gladius?" It's not funny. But you laugh anyway. Everything's funnier when you haven't slept, you're wearing 70 pounds of iron, and the food is actively plotting your demise. Historians still debate whether legionary rations were nutritious or merely survivable. Some argue soldiers had decent access to fresh produce, cured meat, even olive oil. Others believe most of you lived on barley, salt, vinegar, and anxiety. You lean toward the second theory. Occasionally, you get meat. Occasionally, it fights back. Floating near the surface of your gruel is a beetle. Not the big kind, just a tiny one, wings curled. You stare at it. Consider your options. Flick it to the edge. Watch it slide back in. Flick harder. Eventually, you scoop it onto a dry corner of biscuit and drop it on the dirt. It twitches. You take another bite. Problem solved. Next to you, Marcus pulls out a dried fig from a small pouch. Contraband, technically. Personal rations were always suspect, especially anything that tastes like joy. He breaks it in half and hands you a piece. It's chewy, sweet, a flash of flavor so rich it feels illegal. You close your eyes and savor it for 3 entire seconds before the taste disappears behind another spoonful of hot bland. Rumor is, Gaius mumbles through a mouthful of mush, "We're moving east next week. New post across the river." You raise an eyebrow. "We just got here." Doesn't matter. Someone insulted someone, or forgot to pay taxes, or sneezed in Latin. Now it's our problem. Great. More mud. Lucius snorts. More gruel. Probably colder, somehow. You finish your bowl. Well, most of it. The last bit is hardened near the rim, congealed like battlefield plaster. You scrape it off with your spoon, decide it's not worth the risk, and hand the empty bowl to a recruit on cleaning duty. He salutes like you just gave him a golden coin. You nod solemnly. Let the poor soul have his moment. Nearby, the cook is arguing with a supply runner about a shipment of cheese that turned into soup. Not cheese soup, just melted cheese. The runner is blaming the sun. The cook is blaming the gods. A centurion walks past, hears the word cheese, and mutters, "Luxury," before disappearing behind a tent flap. A rooster crows. Not the majestic kind from paintings, but a scraggly, half-feathered chicken that belongs to a commander who insists it's a lucky omen. The rooster has no concept of rank. It poops where it pleases. It once pecked the boot of a legate. No punishment. The bird is untouchable. Unbothered. An icon. Someone yells from the fire pit, "Who left their helmet in the porridge pot?" No one claims it. Everyone laughs. You glance over. The helmet's just sitting there, steaming. Either someone was trying to clean it or they've invented soup-based polishing. You suspect Tertius. He once claimed you could bake bread inside your helmet if you left it near the fire long enough. Smelled like onions and courage, he said. Lucius stretches beside you, his armor creaking like a rusty cartwheel. You think if I fake a fever, they'll let me polish spears instead of marching? Not unless you catch fire, you reply. And even then, probably still have to hold your shield. Figures. He leans back, staring at the sky. At least it's not raining. There's a strange moment of calm. The sunlight breaks fully over the edge of the eastern palisade, turning the rows of tents into golden stripes. Smoke curls from the fires. Men talk quietly. Someone strums a lyre off in the distance, badly, but no one stops him. For a second, the world feels okay. Then the trumpet sounds again. Short. Sharp. Impatient. Breakfast is over. You rise, shake crumbs from your cloak, and strap your shield tighter. Around you, the benches empty in waves. Soldiers file out toward their respective duties, some to the wall, some to the training fields, some to the endless joy of ditch digging or latrine clearing. You spot a group of recruits still trying to figure out which end of the broom is the handle. As you fall in step with your contubernium, someone yells from behind, "Oi! Who dropped half a biscuit in the wine barrel?" No one answers. Some mysteries are best left unsolved. You adjust your belt, feeling the soft weight of that fig still settling in your stomach. Not a full meal. Not even close. But enough. Just enough to survive another morning in the greatest army the world has ever known. And maybe, if the gods are in a good mood, you'll get a second fig before the week is out. The sharp blast of the trumpet cuts through the humid morning air like a sudden storm, pulling you from any lingering thoughts of breakfast or a moment's peace. You snap to attention, the weight of your armor settling heavier now as you prepare for the day's most grueling task, training drills. It's a phrase that sounds harmless enough, training drills, but you know better. It means hours on the dusty training ground, repeating motions until your muscles scream, until your mind numbs, and until you question every life choice that brought you here. You trudge alongside your contubernium and cohort, your boots thudding rhythmically against the hardened earth. The camp's bustling noises fade behind the cadence of marching feet and the sharp commands echoing from the centurion. Every step is measured, deliberate. You lock your gaze forward and try to ignore the blister developing on your heel, the sting of yesterday's sword practice still throbbing in your forearm. Your Caligae. Those infamous hobnailed sandals, clack heavily, dragging dust into the hot air. Around you, men line up in rigid formation, shoulders squared and shields clasped firmly against their left arms. The centurion strides in front of the ranks, a figure of steely discipline. His glare pierces through the morning haze, and you feel your posture straighten involuntarily. Form ranks. Shield to shield, he commands, his voice cutting like a blade. You raise your scutum, feeling its familiar bulk lock against your arm. The metallic clinks of armor and weapons mesh into a sharp, almost musical symphony, an intimidating cacophony that stokes the fire of your resolve. The drills begin. First, sword practice. You draw your gladius, a short, stabbing blade designed for brutal close combat. The weight feels heavier today, as if the sword itself shares your fatigue. You position yourself next to Lucius and Gaius, both grim-faced, muscles tense with focus. The centurion barks out a series of strikes and parries. You thrust forward, your blade slicing air, then whip it back in a practiced arc. The movements are drilled into your memory, yet the repetitive pounding of metal against metal, the sharp clash of practice blades, and the searing sun overhead make each motion a test of endurance. You catch a brief glimpse of sweat dripping down Lucius's brow, the muscles in his jaw clenching in concentration. He slips on a patch of dust, nearly stumbling, earning a sharp rebuke from the decanus beside him. You bite back a laugh, knowing well the consequences of losing footing in these drills. Your arms ache from the constant tension. You notice the redness creeping across your knuckles where your sword handle presses unrelentingly. Your legs feel like lead beneath the weight of armor and exhaustion. Despite all this, the centurion's voice never softens. Faster. More precise. Remember, a moment's hesitation costs lives. You think of the battle drills you witnessed during training, how a single misstep meant the difference between survival and the spear's cold embrace. It's not just muscle memory, it's a matter of life and death. After weapon drills, the cohort moves into marching exercises. The ground trembles beneath hundreds of synchronized feet, a thunderous drumbeat of Roman might. Marching is no leisurely stroll, it's a meticulously coordinated ritual transforming scattered men into a singular, unstoppable force. You count your steps, matching each breath to the steady beat. Every muscle in your body screams in protest, yet you push through, aware that faltering means failure, not just for you, but for your comrades who rely on you to hold the line. The sun climbs relentlessly, beating down through the heavy larica segmentata strapped to your torso. Sweat drips beneath your helmet's bronze shell, pooling behind your neck and blurring your vision with salty tears. Your tunic clings damply to your skin, the leather straps chafing where armor meets flesh. The weight of your shield presses uncomfortably into your forearm. Your throat feels parched, but you keep marching, your legs burning with every step. The repetitive sound of marching, the rhythmic stomp of thousands of feet, almost lulls you into a trance, an odd mix of exhaustion and determination. Despite the misery, there is a strange camaraderie in shared hardship, a silent understanding that this pain is both your cross and your bond. You exchange a brief nod with Gaius, silently acknowledging the grueling routine you both endure. No words are needed, the fatigue, frustration, and stubborn pride are written plainly on every worn face around you. Nearby, you catch sight of a young recruit faltering, his breathing uneven. A veteran soldier claps him on the back, urging him forward. You remember being that recruit not long ago, so eager, so naive, so utterly broken by the first march. The memory stings, but also fuels your grit. Historians still argue whether the famous Roman discipline in these drills was as flawless as the stories suggest or whether cracks and chaos were more common behind the scenes. From where you stand, it feels like both. The formation is tight, the commands sharp, but moments of confusion and near mishaps ripple through the ranks. Sometimes a recruit fumbles, a shield bumps in others, and the centurion's fury erupts like a sudden storm, only to calm again as if nothing happened. You notice a few men sneaking glances at the camp gates, wishing the day would end, or that a sudden emergency might grant them a reprieve. The centurion, however, notices nothing, his eyes miss nothing. After hours of relentless repetition, the centurion calls for a break. You sink gratefully beneath the shade of a nearby tree, muscles trembling as you peel off your helmet to let cool air soothe your scorched scalp. The dirt beneath your fingers is dry and rough, a small comfort in the harsh world you inhabit. You cup water from a shallow stream and splash it onto your face and wrists. The icy cold steals the sting from your skin and momentarily revives your spirits. Around you, others collapse similarly, panting and wiping sweat from dirt-smudged faces. Recruits joke about who will faint first, veterans exchange tired but knowing smiles. This shared suffering, pain and pride intertwined, is the rhythm of Legion life. Nearby, a group of soldiers share stories to distract themselves, some tall tales about past battles, some complaints about the cook's latest experimental stew, and one grizzled veteran swearing the camp ghost still prowls the latrines at night. You listen, amused despite your exhaustion. These moments of levity are rare but cherished. As you catch your breath, your thoughts drift briefly away from the drill's relentless pace. Despite the misery, despite the aching joints and blistered feet, there is a certain pride in belonging to this force. The Legion is more than just an army, it is order amid chaos, strength amid uncertainty. You are a part of that legacy, a cog in the great machine of Rome's conquest and endurance. The whistle blows again, calling you back to ranks. You tighten your grip on your scutum, hoist your helmet back into place, and prepare for the afternoon's challenges. The dust rises as the Legion moves forward, an unyielding wave of iron and will. The march resumes. You lock your jaw against the pain, count your steps, and remind yourself, survive today, endure tomorrow, and maybe one day you'll look back on this, telling tales of sweat, steel, and unbreakable resolve to those who never marched a single step in armor. You hear the horn before your legs stop moving. A long, low moan that rises over the sound of leather creaking and sandals scraping against packed dirt. The order is clear, stop. Not to rest. No, you've arrived at tonight's campsite, and now the real work begins. Your body, despite its protests, moves almost automatically. You've done this before. Dozens, maybe hundreds of times. So have your brothers in the Cantaburnium. No one needs to speak. Packs hit the ground. Shovels are drawn. The camp must be raised before darkness falls, before food, before sleep. You glance around. Flat land, maybe a small rise to the west. A bit too close to that stream, you think, but not your call. A standard bearer marks the central point with a tall pole bearing the emblem of your cohort. That's the anchor. The heart. Everything radiates from there. You march off toward your designated edge of camp, shovel in hand, heart already sinking. Before tents, before fire, before food, the latrines. Digging a latrine is a science and a punishment wrapped into one. You measure the line, 10 paces from the outer wall of the proposed camp. Wind direction matters. You don't want a breeze wafting surprises toward your tent. Your team starts digging a trench, shoulder to shoulder, the earth dry and packed tight from days without rain. The first few shovels of dirt come easy. Then the stones begin. The roots. The occasional bone, animal, you hope. You sweat. The sun sinks lower. Blisters bloom in your palms. Dirt clings to your sandals. Your arms ache. Still, you dig. A proper latrine trench should be 4 feet deep, at least. Wide enough for a man to crouch without falling in. Someone carves notches into a stick, makeshift seats, if you're lucky. Most nights, you balance with your knees creaking, your dignity left back on the battlefield. You sprinkle a layer of ash at the bottom, if any's available. Keeps the smell down, they say. Stops flies, maybe. Keeps the gods happy, maybe. It's never quite clear. Someone mutters a joke about finding Etruscan treasure. Another man drops his shovel and rubs his back with a wince. The dirt pile rises beside the trench, loose and dry. And then, someone calls out, "Centurion wants tents up." You wipe your brow with a filthy sleeve, not even stopping to stretch. Shovel back in its loop. Now it's on to the next ritual, camp setup. You return to your section of the camp, marked earlier by pegs and string. 8 men to a tent, always. The same faces. The same smells. The same dry snoring and arguments over who stole whose bread. It's not home. But it's routine. That's enough. The leather is unrolled. Worn, patched, stiff. The smell of old hide and sweat clings to every fold. You drive stakes into the hard earth, muttering curses when your fingers catch the edge. Ropes are pulled taut. Pegs hammered. The tent rises slowly, like some ancient beast being summoned from the ground. Once the frame is up, you crawl inside. You smooth out the earth with your hands, pull up loose stones, create a small hollow where your hip will lie. There's no room to stretch fully. Your body must learn to curl like a scroll. Every inch of space matters. Bedrolls are unrolled. Not soft. Not thick. But they hold the memory of your body, and that's something. You place your gear in a neat line, gladius, shield, helmet, satchel. Everything has its place. The centurion inspects everything in the morning. Woe unto the man whose sandals are misplaced. Then it's time to build the camp wall. Each century is responsible for a segment. You grab your delabra, your pickaxe, and join the line. The trench must be 2 feet deep, angled outward. You dig, lifting clumps of stubborn earth and piling them beside you. Your arms burn. Someone next to you groans. Another sings a half-hearted marching song. It helps. Not much, but a little. Once the ditch is complete, sharpened stakes are driven into it, pila muralia, forming a crude palisade. Not enough to stop a siege, but it'll keep thieves, wolves, and nosy locals at bay. You lash the stakes together with rope, then smear a bit of ash at the base to ward off rot. By now, the sun is nearly gone. The sky glows amber, and long shadows stretch across the camp like fingers. The fires start to light, flickering like scattered stars. You pause to look at them, for just a moment, and feel something that might almost be satisfaction. But there's still more to do. You collect water. Fill skins and buckets from the stream or well, then carry them back, sloshing against your hip. You wipe your hands, check your kit again. Everything is routine. Repetition. Order. That's what keeps you sane. You remind yourself of that, even when your spine aches and your eyes feel too dry to blink. Around you, the camp comes to life. Men mend sandals. Sharpen blades. Patch cloaks. One man carefully writes a letter home, his face soft in the firelight. Another plays with dice, mumbling a prayer to Fortuna under his breath. You hear laughter, quiet and tired. You hear someone snoring already. You walk past the latrines again on the way to your post. The smell has begun. Not terrible. Not yet. But you know how it will be by morning. The trench will steam in the cold dawn. Flies will gather. Someone will slip and curse the gods. Historians still argue how standardized these camps really were. Some claim the Romans laid out every camp with mathematical precision, always the same angles, same streets, same placement of tents and latrines. Others argue that in rough terrain, or under pressure, camps became improvised, chaotic, even dangerous. From your place in the dirt, you suspect the truth is somewhere in between. Sometimes it's exact. Sometimes it's just whatever keeps the rain out. You crawl into your tent finally, your back damp, your hair gritty with dust. You stretch your legs and immediately regret it. Your knees crack. Your toes throb. Your stomach growls, but there's still work to be done before you eat. But for a moment, you lie there, just breathing. The latrines are dug. The tents are up. The wall is built. Your body aches, but you did what needed to be done. That is the Roman way. You build. You march. You endure. And when morning comes, you will tear it all down again, roll up the tent, fill in the latrine trench, and march forward like none of it ever existed. That's the funny thing about life in the Legion. Every camp is temporary. Every wall will be pulled down. But the routine, the rhythm, remains. The sweat, the dirt, the shovel in your hand. That is permanent. You shift on your bedroll, closing your eyes, your ears filled with the low murmur of fires, the distant click of dice, the occasional grunt of someone adjusting in sleep. Somewhere, an officer is still barking orders. Somewhere, a mule brays. But here, in your patch of leather and dust, the world grows still. You think about the trench you dug. Not noble work. Not glorious. But necessary. Just like everything else here. You dig so someone else can relieve himself in peace. You raise a wall so the others can sleep without fear. You carry water, light fires, hammer stakes, so the machine of Rome keeps turning. And slowly, your breathing slows. Your fingers loosen. You dream, not of battle, not of glory, not even of home, but of silence. Of earth. Of the rhythmic swing of a shovel. Of the soft, familiar thump of dirt landing behind you. That's the sound of the work. That's the sound of Rome. You trudge forward to your post at the edge of the Roman camp, the sun a blazing orb high overhead, turning the earth beneath your feet into a dusty, cracked expanse. The wooden palisades stand like weary sentinels, rough-hewn logs sharpened and planted firmly to fend off any unwelcome visitors, whether wild beasts or hostile humans. The air is thick with the scent of sweat, leather, burning wood, and faintly of smoke curling lazily from the campfires behind you. Your armor feels heavier than usual today. The segmented plates press against your torso, the leather straps rub uncomfortably across your sunburnt skin, and the hobnailed caligy thump heavily on the hard-packed dirt with every reluctant step. Yet, as you reach your assigned station, you grasp your spear with a familiar grip. It feels almost like an extension of your arm, solid, dependable, a silent promise of defense. The first few moments at your post are a strange mixture of relief and tension. Relief that your shift has begun and you can focus on the task at hand. Tension because you know the hours ahead will test your patience, your body, and your mind. The Legion's safety rests on the vigilance of each man on guard, and for the next many hours, that responsibility is yours alone. The camp behind you is a hive of quiet activity, blacksmiths hammering out horseshoes and weapons, cooks shouting orders and stirring massive pots of stew, soldiers cleaning armor or tending wounds. But beyond the palisades, the world is deceptively still, save for the occasional call of a distant bird or the rustle of a small animal in the brush. It's the silence that's unnerving. It forces your senses to sharpen, every snap of a twig or rustling of leaves triggering an adrenaline spike. You become hyper-aware of every sound and every shadow, as if the very air might betray an approaching enemy. Standing motionless under the merciless sun, you feel the heat soak into your skin, turning sweat into a gritty mixture that drips from your chin and pools beneath your armor. The bronze helmet atop your head reflects the sun's rays, casting sharp flashes of light that make you squint. The leather straps under your chin are tight, almost choking, but loosening them would mean risking the helmet slipping during combat, a risk no soldier can afford. You shift weight from one foot to another, muscles stiff from the hours of standing still. The ache in your calves spreads slowly up your legs, your shoulders tighten from the weight of armor and spear. Every so often, you stretch a locked finger or roll your shoulders discreetly, careful not to appear lax. Your eyes never stray far from the tree line just beyond the fence, every shadow there could hide an enemy scout, or worse, a raiding party. Historians still argue whether Roman soldiers adhered to strict guard schedules or if exhaustion and the boredom of endless watches led to lapses. Some claim the discipline was unbreakable, a testament to Roman military rigor. Others paint a more human picture, men nodding off for a few moments, dozing as the sun scorched their backs, only waking to startle themselves awake. Your own experience agrees with a middle ground. The training drills ingrained vigilance deep into your muscle memory, but the harsh reality often challenged that resolve. The dryness in your throat is maddening, but drinking water means leaving your post unguarded. You eye the small water skin hanging on a peg nearby but resist the urge. The risk is too great, a single moment's absence could let an enemy slip through or allow a wild animal to invade. You swallow thickly, tasting dust and sweat instead. Your mind drifts briefly to the rumors whispered in the mess tent. Talk of bandits spotted on the roads leading toward the camp, strange lights flickering in the forest after dark, and even superstitions about restless spirits haunting the latrines. These stories, though likely exaggerations, seep into your thoughts and stretch the imagination during these long watches. A fellow guard nearby attempts to break the oppressive silence with a dry joke about the camp's food. If I'm forced to eat that gruel one more time, I might try seasoning it with a little more dirt, might as well make it taste like home, he mutters, voice low but laced with weary humor. You chuckle softly, grateful for the brief camaraderie. Humor is a rare but valuable reprieve from the oppressive boredom. Minutes crawl by, each one feeling like an hour. Your vision flickers with fatigue, and you have to blink rapidly to stay focused. Despite the heat, a chill runs down your spine whenever a shadow shifts unexpectedly. Your spear feels heavier now, but you hold it firm, knowing that any sign of weakness could cost lives. At one point, a rustle in the underbrush causes your muscles to tense instantly. Heart pounding, you raise your spear, eyes locked on the movement. For a moment, everything freezes. Then, a small hare bolts from the bushes, vanishing as quickly as it appeared. Relief floods you, though the jolt sharpens your senses anew. Moments like this remind you why the watch is necessary. Danger can be anywhere, even in the smallest sound. Your thoughts return to home, the smell of fresh bread, the cool shade of olive groves, the sound of laughter drifting from the village square. These memories bring a bittersweet smile. Duty keeps you here, guarding strangers in a harsh land while your family sleeps soundly miles away. The hours wear on. Your legs ache, your back stiffens, and your throat burns. You watch as the camp gradually quiets. The blacksmiths lay down their hammers, conversations dwindle to whispers, and the light shifts as the sun sinks toward the horizon. The approaching evening brings a promise of relief, but also the start of another's watch. Torches flicker to life along the palisades, casting dancing shadows. The change of guard is signaled, and fresh soldiers arrive with renewed energy, ready to take your place. You envy their vigor but know you'll return to the post soon enough. Before leaving, you take a long, slow breath and look back at the camp. The tents glow softly with candlelight, soldiers resting after a hard day. The Legion's pulse beats steady and strong here, held together by countless sentinels who endure the monotony and hardship, keeping watch so others may sleep. You shoulder your spear and march toward the camp gate, the evening breeze a welcome relief on sunburned skin. Above, the stars begin to pierce the night sky, silent witnesses to the Legion's endless vigilance. The watch continues, night after night, a tireless shield protecting the Empire's fragile heart. And you, soldier, stand firm at the edge of the world, a guardian of Rome's vast domain, bound by duty, discipline, and unyielding resolve. The order comes at first light. A centurion's voice cuts through the low murmur of the waking camp like a blade through thick linen. Pack your kits. Break camp. We march within the hour. You blink slowly, rubbing sleep and grit from your eyes as the words sink in. It's not unexpected, nothing ever really is in the Legion, but still, it stirs a certain pit deep in your stomach. Today is not a day of rest. It is a marching day. You sit up, joints cracking like dry branches, and begin the familiar routine. Roll the bedroll, secure the pack, check your gear. Helmet. Check. Shield. Gladius. Water skin. All in place. You run a hand down the length of your scutum, feeling the familiar rough grain of the wood, the smooth rim of iron, the faint scratches earned in drills and past marches. This shield, like your boots and your will need to carry you through the long day ahead. The sun hasn't yet cleared the treetops, but already the air feels thick and warm. You stretch, your back popping as you rise to your feet and scan the rest of the camp. Soldiers moving like sleepwalkers, some coughing into their hands, others joking in hushed tones to mask their dread. Horses being saddled, carts loaded. Fires smothered under layers of dirt. The rhythm of departure beats all around you, silent, methodical, inevitable. You line up with your contubernian, your little band of 8 brothers in arms, and take your place in the long winding column that will soon stretch for miles. There is a solemnity in this moment, just before the first footstep. The calm before the monotony. And then, the horn sounds. One sharp, unmistakable note. Your right foot lifts without thought. It begins. The first few miles are always the easiest. The mind is distracted by the shifting of gear, the pace of the march, the crunch of boots against packed dirt and gravel. But soon, the rhythm settles in. Step, step, step. Breathe. Step, step, adjust shield. Step. Wipe sweat. Step again. Your body falls into a trance, following the pace set by the standard bearer just ahead. No one speaks unless necessary. Breath is precious. Morale is fragile. The sun rises higher, and the air turns from warm to punishing. You can feel the heat radiating off the road itself, stone and dust alike soaking up the sun's fury and reflecting it right back into your face. Your helmet traps the warmth like a bread oven, and you can feel trickles of sweat dripping from your hairline, down your temples, past your ears, soaking into the collar of your tunic. You taste iron and dust. The dust is relentless. It clings to your tongue, your teeth, your eyebrows. It collects in the folds of your cloak, settles in the cracks of your sandals, and cakes between the plates of your armor. You'll be shaking it out of your gear for days. If you're lucky. The scenery blurs, olive groves, low hills, a scattering of farms where locals pause their work to watch the Roman machine pass. Children gape from behind weather-worn fences. A woman hurries her goats to the side of the road, bowing her head in silence. A shepherd raises 2 fingers in greeting, receiving only stoic stares in return. There is no room for conversation. Your focus is on each aching step, each jarring jolt through your spine every time the road dips or rises. Historians still argue over just how far Roman legions could realistically march in a day. Some say 20 miles was routine, even with full gear. Others suggest that 15 was more common, especially when terrain or heat fought against you. You don't care about the scholarly arguments. Your body tells you the truth with every heartbeat pounding in your ears. Every step feels like lifting a stone with your thighs. Every breath is laced with sand. If this is 15 miles, it's 15 too many. Your pack rides high on your back, over 30 kilos of personal equipment, armor, tools, and provisions. You carry a shovel, a pickaxe, stakes for the night's palisade, and cooking gear. The saying goes, a Roman soldier carries his own world on his back. And you feel it. Every single pound. Occasionally, the column slows. A wheel stuck in mud. A mule refuses to move. A junior officer falls behind. These pauses are blessings. Not for rest, of course, no one sits, but to shift your gear, stretch your shoulders, catch your breath, and let the blood return to your numb toes. But these breaks never last. The column lurches forward again like a giant centipede, each soldier its segment, each step pulling you farther from where you began. You start counting steps in your head. It's a trick old veterans taught you. Count to 100, then start over. Again. And again. The rhythm keeps your mind focused and your body moving. You imagine the steps as grains of sand in an hourglass, one closer to camp. One closer to stew. One closer to lying down. The ground changes. The smooth road gives way to rocky paths. You curse quietly. The stones bite through your sandals, pressing bruises into the soles of your feet. You think longingly of the well-built roads closer to Rome, the flat, paved ones you once heard a patrician brag about. Out here, in the provinces, roads are more suggestion than infrastructure. A soldier behind you begins humming a tune. Someone further up groans. A centurion barks silence. You don't even register the words. Your mind has entered the strange, dreamlike tunnel of long-distance fatigue. You forget your name. You forget where you're going. You are marching. That is all. And then, sometime after the sun begins to lower, the horn blows again, 2 short blasts. You stop in place, swaying slightly. Muscles lock in protest, but you remain upright. The march is over. For now. Camp construction begins immediately. No rest. No delay. You drop your pack and take up tools. Ditches must be dug. Stakes hammered. The perimeter set. It is exhausting, but routine. And after that comes fire. Then food. You sit by your Cantaburnium's fire, spooning lukewarm stew into your mouth without tasting it. Your legs throb. Your spine aches. But you made it. One more day, one more road. You lie on your back, looking up at the sky, stars flickering into place like distant watchfires. You wonder, briefly, if your family is also staring at this same sky. But the thought fades quickly. Sleep pulls you down like a tide. Tomorrow, you'll do it again. Because that's what the Legion does. It marches, not just on roads, but through time, through empires, through history itself. You finally settle down after another day of marching, your legs humming with the dull ache of effort and repetition. The sun has dipped below the hills, casting a warm glow across the encampment as smoke from dozens of small fires begins to rise in lazy tendrils. The air smells of charcoal, sweat, and earth. You drop your pack to the ground with a soft grunt and stretch your back until your spine gives a satisfying pop. This is your reward for another day of service to Rome, rest, and food. Well, food. You reach into your satchel, already knowing what you'll find. A coarse sack of barley flour, wrapped in a scrap of old linen. A few fig-dried pebbles that technically qualify as fruit. A small wedge of hard cheese with an edge darkened by mold. And your favorite part, the salted pork fat, wrapped in waxed paper and smelling faintly of the barn it probably came from. Meals in the Roman legion are not meant to delight. They're meant to sustain. And that, somehow, they do. You sit beside the small fire your contubernium has managed to coax from the damp kindling, passing around dented pots and worn wooden spoons like sacred relics. One man pours water into the pot. Another stirs the barley flour in. Someone tosses in a pinch of salt from their personal stash, a rare gift. Soon, the mixture thickens into a kind of porridge. Pulse, they call it. A Roman staple. Not quite solid, not quite liquid, and never quite flavorful. You've eaten this nearly every night since you first joined the Legion. Sometimes it's thinner, sometimes thicker. Sometimes it burns to the pot. Once, a centurion added lentils and everyone applauded like he was Jupiter himself. As the porridge bubbles, someone produces a small jar and cracks it open. The smell hits your nostrils before you even see the contents, fermented fish, briny and sour, with an undertone of something vaguely horrifying. Garum. Rome's most prized condiment. Loved by nobles and soldiers alike. Though for very different reasons. You hold your breath, pass your bowl over, and accept a single spoonful of the stinking brown liquid. It makes the porridge taste less like paste and more like salty paste. Tonight, there's a surprise. A few thin strips of goat meat, traded from a local shepherd for a worn pair of sandals and some bronze buttons. The meat is stringy and tough, but it adds texture and a little thrill. Your teeth actually have something to do. You chew slowly, carefully, not out of politeness but to avoid losing a filling. Around the fire, your contubernium eats in relative silence. Not because they're unfriendly, quite the opposite, but because they're exhausted. The kind of exhaustion that lives in your bones, that makes your eyelids feel heavy even before the first bite. A few mutter prayers to Mars, asking for strength. One man hums softly, maybe to himself, maybe to the gods. Somewhere in Rome, one of them says, some spoiled patrician is complaining that his goose isn't stuffed with enough raisins. Someone else groans in agreement. Another spits into the fire. Humor is the final ingredient in every meal. You've learned that by now. No matter how tasteless the food, someone will add a joke or a sarcastic remark, and suddenly the stew seems warmer, the bread less stale, the night a little less cruel. The drink of choice is posca, a sharp blend of vinegar and water. It sounds awful, and it sort of is. But it cuts the grime in your throat and cools your head. You swig it and wince, feeling it burn slightly down your gullet. Some soldiers sweeten it with herbs or honey if they're lucky. Most just drink it plain and pretend it's something else. Historians still argue whether Roman food was nutritious or merely tolerable. Some say the daily rations kept soldiers strong and healthy. Others insist that malnutrition was rampant, especially during long campaigns. You don't care about scholarly debates. Your stomach tells you everything you need to know. It rumbles, then settles. You eat. You live. That's enough. Some nights, you forage. Wild onions in the underbrush. Mushrooms under fallen logs. Once, a soldier swore he found a patch of wild mint and flavored an entire pot of lentils with it. It tasted like soup with breath freshener. He was celebrated for days. You remember one campaign, far from here, when the supply lines were cut. You survived on boiled roots and whatever dried crumbs could be scraped from the bottoms of sacks. You shared a single onion among 12 men. It was the best thing you'd tasted in weeks. One man cried while eating his portion. That memory comes back to you every time someone complains that the cheese is too hard. You finish your bowl and scrape it clean with a hunk of stale bread, wiping every last smear of goat fat and garum off the sides. Your spoon is worn smooth, the edge rounded from use. You tuck it into your belt like a prized weapon. Someone begins telling a story, probably the same one he told last week, about a time in Hispania when he traded his boots for a basket of eggs. The story changes every time. This time, the eggs hatch into snakes. You smile and let the words wash over you. You miss food with flavor. Not just taste, but flavor that sings. You remember roasted garlic, honey-drenched pastries, fresh plums, warm olive oil dripping from your fingers. Those things feel impossibly distant now. Not because they're rare, but because they belong to a different life, a life where food was celebration, not fuel. Sometimes you dream of your mother's kitchen. Of lentils bubbling in a clay pot, of steam rising from fresh bread, of your father chewing noisily and commenting on every bite. You remember arguing over whether figs should go in the stew, and how someone always, accidentally, added too much wine. Those smells and sounds feel like stories now. Faded but comforting. The fire crackles lower. Bellies are quiet. The mood softens. A man pulls out a flute and plays a few slow, mournful notes. Another starts humming a tune from the old provinces, something about lost love and olive groves. You listen, half asleep, your mind drifting between the sound and the stars. On rare occasions, the gods smile on your table. A trader passes through with garlic cloves or soft cheese. A local offers eggs in exchange for protection. One night, someone roasted a duck. You can't remember why or how, but you remember the taste. Sweet, rich, crispy skin. You remember the silence as everyone took the first bite. That kind of silence is sacred. There's a saying in the Legion, you march on your stomach. It's true. Food is what keeps you moving, keeps you fighting, keeps you hoping for the next meal, the next fire, the next breath. Even when the road is long, and your feet are sore, and your body aches like it's been carved from stone, you keep going. Because there's always another bowl of stew waiting. Another strip of goat. Another laugh shared under stars. You lie back slowly, using your pack as a pillow. Your fingers rest on your belly, not quite full but no longer hollow. Around you, the camp begins to quiet. Snores replace stories. Flames fade to embers. You look up at the sky, vast and distant, and think, just briefly, of figs and bread and the taste of honey. And then, you sleep. You wake before the horn. Not because you're eager, never that, but because your back has decided that sleeping on packed earth is no longer something it's willing to tolerate in silence. You shift slowly on your bedroll, stretch out a leg, and feel the whisper of morning chill crawl up your spine. The air smells faintly of dew, horse sweat, and wood smoke. The camp is still. Not for long. By the time the first rays of light brush the tops of the nearby hills, you're already up, packing your gear with practiced, mechanical movements. No one talks much in the mornings. Not until the camp is down and the ground is cleared, the latrine filled in, the tents rolled, and the fire pits raked over like they were never there. You leave no trace. Tomorrow's march begins in silence, but with that strange, shared understanding, you're leaving this place behind, like every other place before it. But not every place feels the same. This region, wherever exactly it is on the map you never see, has a different air. The trees feel older. The wind smells foreign. Even the birdsong sounds like it's from a different storybook. You've marched through so many provinces, Gaul, Hispania, Britannia, Illyria. Each with its own quirks. Each with its own local people watching from behind half-closed doors, their eyes flicking toward your armor with a mix of fear, curiosity, and something darker, resentment, maybe. Or just exhaustion. Today is no different. As your column snakes its way down a narrow track, flanked by gnarled olive trees and the occasional goat's skull nailed to a post, you notice movement in the distance. A small cluster of huts. Smoke curling from one chimney. A child's face in a doorway. Then it's gone. You're not here to conquer, not today. You're just passing through. The locals know this. They watch, silently, sometimes waving, more often not. You've learned that a neutral face is safer than a friendly one. A smile can be misinterpreted. So you keep your eyes forward and your hand near your gladius. Just in case. At midday, your unit halts by a stream to rest and refill water skins. The centurion allows a short break, merciful, considering the sun. You sit beneath a twisted cypress and sip your pasca, grimacing at the vinegar sting. A farmer appears on the ridge above, leading a cart pulled by a donkey that looks just as tired as you feel. He pauses, glances down, and raises a hand in greeting. Someone near you waves back, cautiously. Then the man continues on, disappearing behind a rocky outcrop. Just another ghost in the ever-moving play of life beyond the Legion. Sometimes, though, those encounters are less distant. You remember one village, its name long forgotten, where the locals approached your unit openly, bringing baskets of bread, fish wrapped in herbs, and jugs of thin wine. Not as a bribe, not in fear, but almost with hospitality. It shocked everyone. You and your comrades stood awkwardly for a moment, unsure whether to bow or reach for your weapons. The centurion accepted the gifts and nodded solemnly. That night, you ate better than you had in weeks. And no one attacked. The next day, the village was empty. Doors swinging in the breeze. Chickens clucking aimlessly. Not a soul in sight. Still, the memory lingers, quiet kindness in a land you did not belong to. Of course, not all encounters are so benign. You remember another place, a hillside settlement you passed through on your way to reinforce a distant garrison. The locals threw stones. Not large ones, not enough to injure, but just enough to send a message. They cursed in a language you didn't speak, and one of the younger recruits shouted back, hand twitching toward his sword. The Optio stopped him with a glare. "You're not here to teach them Latin," he said. "You're here to march." Still, the anger stayed with you. It wasn't personal. It never is. But marching through someone else's homeland, eating their grain, trampling their paths, it leaves a mark, on them and on you. Later, around the fire, someone joked that a goat had insulted his mother. Laughter broke the tension, as it often does. You stared into the flames, trying to picture what it must be like to live in one place forever. To watch soldiers pass through like storms. To plant roots, not just tents. One of your comrades once tried to explain Roman expansion to a curious merchant girl using broken words and grand gestures. "We bring roads," he said, "and peace." She'd stared at him for a moment, then replied with something sharp and indecipherable. You never found out what she said, but the tone was unmistakable. Peace looks different depending on which side of the helmet you wear. As the days pass, the landscape shifts. The soil underfoot turns redder. The plants more sparse. You cross rocky ridges and wind-carved valleys, and everywhere. Signs of those who came before. Crumbled altars. Abandoned shrines. Stone markers etched with names you can't read. This land has its own gods, you realize. Old gods. Wild ones. Gods that don't wear togas. Historians still argue how much Rome absorbed from the cultures it marched through, and how much it erased. Some claim the empire was a great blender, a force of syncretism that allowed local beliefs to thrive under Roman names. Others say it steamrolled identities, replacing tribal rites with civic festivals, homemade statues with marble imports from the capital. From your place in the dust, the truth feels messier than either side admits. You've seen Roman roads built over sacred paths. But you've also seen villagers sneak garlands onto the feet of Roman statues, whispering in languages you don't understand. Culture isn't conquered. It lingers. Like smoke in your tunic. You remember one camp, pitched just outside a ruined temple. The locals said it belonged to a forgotten goddess of rivers and childbirth. The altar had been toppled, its offerings stolen or rotted away. Still, one night, a woman came and left a basket of flowers near the broken steps. She didn't speak. She didn't look at you. Just left the flowers and walked into the dark. No one disturbed them. Even your centurion, usually so strict, said nothing. The farther you travel from Rome, the more you feel the distance, not just in miles, but in meaning. Here, your name doesn't matter. Your rank means little. You're not a symbol of glory. You're a stranger in strange lands. And yet, over time, you start to recognize patterns. A bowl of soup passed in silence. A child waving shyly before ducking behind a wall. An old man offering a carved amulet for a piece of iron. These are the little exchanges that define your days now. Not battles. Not victories. But these small, human flickers in the dust. At one outpost, a boy no older than 10 approached your fire with a small clay whistle shaped like a bird. He blew it once, and the sound startled your entire squad. You gave him a strip of dried meat in return. He smiled, handed you the whistle, and ran off. You still carry it in your satchel, though you rarely touch it. It reminds you of something soft, something that doesn't belong in armor. Sometimes the locals laugh at you. Sometimes they fear you. Sometimes they simply ignore you. And that, in its way, is the strangest feeling of all. Being invisible in armor. By the end of each day, after so many miles and so many eyes watching you from hedges and doorways, you begin to feel less like a soldier and more like a shadow passing across someone else's story. And when you lie down to sleep, after the fire fades and the stars blink open, you think of the people who watched you walk by and wondered what you wanted. You think of the girl with the sharp words. The boy with the whistle. The woman with the flowers. You think, maybe Rome is a map of footsteps, not cities. A trail of brief encounters. Shared glances. Fleeting kindness. Bitterness left in footprints. And when the empire fades, maybe that's what remains. Not marble. But memory. Night doesn't fall in the Roman camp. It folds itself carefully around you, layer by layer, like a heavy woolen cloak. One minute you're still seeing the silhouettes of trees beyond the palisade, the next, you're surrounded by nothing but the gentle flicker of fires and the rhythmic breathing of the men who sleep around you. But you're not one of them. Not tonight. Tonight, it's your turn for watch duty. You rise slowly, trying not to disturb the others. Your knees crack in protest as you slip on your boots and secure your belt. You move quietly, like a ghost. You've done this many times before, and yet each time the air feels different. There's a hush to it. Not silence exactly, but an absence. The kind that makes your skin feel thinner. Like the darkness is pressing just a little harder than usual. You step out from the warmth of the tent, and the night swallows you. The stars are out, scattered across the sky like bits of bone on black velvet. The moon is barely a sliver, just enough to guide your steps between the tents. Most fires have died down now, just glowing embers and faint orange rings. Somewhere, someone snores like a wild boar. Somewhere else, someone murmurs in their sleep. Your post is along the east wall. You trudge past the line of stakes and ditchwork that mark the perimeter. The ground is uneven, just enough to twist an ankle if you're not careful. You find the station, a small gap between palisade beams, just wide enough to let you scan the tree line beyond. There's nothing out there. But that never stops your eyes from searching. You lean against the post, arms folded, gladius sheathed but ready. Your breath fogs faintly in the cold. The night smells like burnt wood, pine resin, and damp earth. It's quiet, save for the occasional creak of leather or distant hoot of an owl. This is the loneliest hour in a Legionnaire's day. And the strangest. You see, when it's your turn on watch, the world changes. Things you'd scoff at in daylight start to feel a little too real. You start noticing shadows that don't belong. Sounds that repeat themselves just slightly wrong. You think about the curses carved into ancient stones you marched past last week. About the hunched figures the villagers whispered about. About that time someone claimed to see a face watching from the trees, and swore it blinked. The Romans are not a superstitious people, at least not officially. But soldiers are different. You rub the wooden charm you keep tucked inside your tunic. A crude figure, no bigger than your thumb, carved by your grandfather before he passed. A household deity, maybe. Or just a piece of home. You don't know. You've never marched without it. Around you, others keep their own protections. One man wears a wolf tooth on a leather cord, says it keeps ghosts away. Another keeps a folded prayer written in a dead language stuffed into the lining of his helmet. Your centurion once buried a chicken bone under the camp entrance. For luck, he muttered, though he'd never admit it aloud. You remember a night back in Germania, years ago, when your watch partner went pale as ash and dropped his spear. Said he saw a man in the trees, glowing eyes, no mouth. The next morning, he couldn't remember what he'd said. Wouldn't talk about it again. But he refused every night watch after that. That's the thing about night watches. They don't test your strength. They test your mind. Historians still argue whether Roman soldiers truly believed in spirits and omens, or whether superstition was just a way of coping with stress and boredom. Some claim that charms and rituals were officially discouraged. Others insist that legion camps were full of hidden rites, whispered prayers, and strange talismans. You know what you believe. You believe in patterns. In gut feelings. In things moving just outside your vision. You've seen too much to laugh too hard. Still, the logical part of you, the one trained in formations and tactics, does its job. You scan the trees, check the shadows, stay alert. You listen. Not just to the rustle of leaves or the shifting coals of the nearest fire, but to what you don't hear. Sometimes silence is louder than noise. Halfway through your watch, you hear something. Not much. Just a low crunch of brush. Could be a fox. Could be a wild dog. Or just your ears playing tricks again. You grip your gladius, shift your stance. You don't call out. Not unless you're certain. A few seconds pass. Then more. Nothing. You relax, partly. Let your hand drop to your side again. You feel your heart thud, steady and slow. It's nothing. Probably. Still, you murmur a small prayer. One of the old ones. Not Latin. The kind your mother used to whisper when the wind sounded like voices through the shutters. You're not even sure who it's addressed to. But it makes you feel better. You pace a little to keep the blood flowing. Cold bites your fingertips. You shift your weight from foot to foot. You stare up at the stars and try to remember their names. Some soldiers know them all, claim the stars can guide you when maps fail. You just think they look like home. On your last campaign, one man claimed to see omens in bird flight. Another read entrails like he was decoding a letter from Jupiter himself. You always thought it was nonsense. Until the day he warned of a storm coming, and by evening the entire ridge flooded and nearly swept your tent down the hillside. After that, you stopped rolling your eyes quite so often. You lean against the wall again, glancing back at the sleeping forms scattered throughout camp. Some are curled tight like snails. Others lie flat, arms splayed, as if daring the cold to challenge them. A few talk in their sleep. One man clutches a sandal like a child holds a doll. It's strange, watching your brothers like this. Defenseless. Soft. During the day, you all march in sync, shields locked, eyes hard. But at night, every man is just skin and breath and memory. No rank. No orders. Just dreams. You wonder what they're dreaming of. Home. Food. That girl they kissed once and never saw again. Or something darker. You know the kind of dreams soldiers have. The kind you wake from with clenched fists and a jaw so tight it aches. You breathe in deep. The air is damp now. A mist rising from the earth like a secret. You check the moon, it's moved. Nearly time. You do one last scan of the tree line. Still nothing. Just shadows. Branches. The occasional flutter of something small and winged. You tap your fingers against your belt, the rhythm grounding you. A quiet beat against the night. Then, at last, footsteps. Your relief arrives, eyes still puffy from sleep, boots half-laced. He nods at you without a word and takes your place. You mutter a quick update, nothing to report, and turn back toward your tent. Every step feels heavier now, as if the night is trying to cling to you. You don't speak of what you thought you saw. You never do. Inside your tent, it's still warm. Your spot is waiting. You slide back into the bedroll, wrapping it around yourself like armor. You close your eyes and listen to the soft noises of the camp, the fire cracking low, the distant murmur of another sentry, the rustle of cloth. You feel safe. But also, watched. Not in a threatening way. Just, noticed. Like something ancient knows your name. The wind brushes your cheek like a whispered warning or blessing, you can't tell which. And as you finally begin to drift off, just on the edge of sleep, you hear it again. Not a noise. Not a voice. Just a feeling. Something out there is listening. Morning comes slowly, as it always does after night watch. Your sleep, once it arrives, is restless and shallow. When the sun finally pushes through the leather folds of your tent, it feels like you've only just closed your eyes. But there's no room for indulgence in the Roman legion. You sit up, groaning softly, and swing your feet over the edge of your roll. The camp is already stirring. Fires being relit, gear adjusted, armor strapped. You hear someone cursing at their hobnails. Another man is singing tunelessly, just loud enough to irritate, but not quite loud enough to punish. The normal sounds of a Roman morning. And then, something rare happens. A horn sounds. Not the command horn. A different one. Higher. Lighter. A horn that means something unexpected has arrived, the courier. Immediately, the camp changes. Men stand straighter. They glance at each other with quiet hope. Not everyone will receive a letter, of course. Most won't. But the possibility, that stirs something. You line up like everyone else, trying not to look too eager, even though your heart has picked up pace. The courier, a lean man with a dust-caked face and sharp eyes, begins calling names. He unrolls a scroll and works down the list. Every name is a ripple across the group. Some men smile wide and step forward. Others shuffle, trying to hide their disappointment. Finally, your name. You step forward, and he hands you a folded, worn scrap of parchment, sealed with a wax stamp that bears no official mark, just a fingerprint and a smear of lavender. You recognize it instantly. It's from home. You don't open it right away. No one ever does. Not in front of the others. Instead, you slip it into your tunic and carry it with you through the morning's duties, latrine fill-ins, pack re-rolling, rations prep. The weight of it presses gently against your chest with every breath. You know the handwriting inside. You know the rhythm of the sentences before you even see them. Later, you retreat to a quiet spot, behind a stack of broken javelins near the edge of the camp, and sit cross-legged in the dust. You unfold the letter carefully, like it's a relic. The ink is smudged in places, the parchment creased, but it's legible. It begins simply, "My son." The handwriting is your mother's. Sturdy, wide loops, and little flourishes at the ends of words. She writes about the olive harvest. About your sister's new husband, who is a bit too quiet, but polite. About your old dog, who now spends most days sleeping under the fig tree. She mentions a neighbor who passed away, but quickly pivots to a joke about the man always being too stubborn to leave a party early. You smile, even as your throat tightens. She ends with, "We miss you, but we are proud. Always. May Mars watch your steps, and Mercury guard your luck." You read it again. And again. Each time, something different sticks out. A phrase, a scent you can almost smell, the faint impression of her thumb where she pressed too hard. For a moment, you're not a legionary. You're a son. A brother. A boy who once hated fig stew. You fold the letter back up and place it inside a pouch wrapped in cloth. That pouch contains your entire life, 2 other letters, a carved wooden whistle, and a pressed flower from someone you don't speak of anymore. The men who survive longest aren't always the strongest, they're the ones who remember why they're surviving. Morale is a fragile thing. It's not just about victories or rations or weather. It's about connection. And in the legions, connection is rationed like water. Some men never receive letters. No one writes to them. No one waits. Over time, you see the change in their eyes. They laugh less. They eat without tasting. They stare at the horizon too long. They take unnecessary risks in battle. Others cling fiercely to the scraps they have. One man in your contubernium reads his letters aloud every time they arrive, even when he's already memorized them. Another carries a drawing from his daughter, folded so many times it's more creased than paper. Still another claims he once received a lock of hair, though no one's ever seen it. Historians still debate how much importance letters really held in the Roman army. Some argue they were rare luxuries, few and far between. Others believe the cursus publicus, Rome's vast communication network, allowed a surprising amount of correspondence, especially for officers and favored cohorts. From where you sit, under the faded sky with dust on your boots and ink on your fingers, the answer feels simple: a letter can save a man's soul. You remember a winter in northern Gaul. Snow up to your calves. Fingers numb even inside gloves. The wind never stopped, it just changed direction. Food was low. Spirits lower. Then, one afternoon, the courier arrived. 3 weeks late, but they're all the same. He brought a single bundle of letters. Not enough for everyone, of course. But those who got them, their eyes lit up. They read aloud by the fire, and the rest of you listened like it was sacred scripture. Someone cried. No one mocked him. You passed wine around, watered down and sour, but it felt sweet that night. You were, for a few precious hours, human again. Not all letters are good, though. Sometimes the words cut. You've seen men read a few lines, then quietly burn the parchment without a word. A betrayal. A death. A child born they'll never meet. These letters don't end with blessings. They end with silence. And sometimes that silence never lifts. But even those letters serve a purpose. They remind you that you still feel. That your heart hasn't gone entirely to iron and callous. That somewhere, something still matters. You spend the rest of the day with a strange lightness in your step. Your armor feels a little less heavy. Your stomach grumbles with slightly more enthusiasm. You find yourself humming an old tune from your village, just a fragment, but enough for one of your brothers to recognize it and join in. In the evening, after the fires are lit and the games begin, you sit with your contubernum around the embers. Someone pulls out dice. Another tries to retell a joke he butchers every time. You all laugh anyway. There's warmth here, not from the fire, but from each other. From shared memory and shared pain. One of the men, a lanky fellow from somewhere east of Rome, tells you his wife wrote him that she's teaching their son to write. He grins, sheepish. Maybe one day he'll write me, he says. You raise your cup to him. He will, you reply. You're both lying a little. But that's what hope sounds like. Later, as you lie in your bedroll, you pull out the letter one more time. You don't read it. Just hold it. The edges are already softening, but the ink remains. A tether. A reminder. You close your eyes, and the sounds of camp blur into background noise. Your breathing slows. You picture the fig tree, the old dog, your mother's hands. And for the first time in weeks, you dream of home, not as something lost, but as something waiting. You wake with the dawn, again. Not because of a horn this time. Just instinct. You've done it for so many years now, your body knows before the light does. The camp is still quiet. Someone nearby mutters in their sleep. A soft rustle of a bird taking off from the top of the palisade reaches your ear. Your back aches the familiar ache, but it no longer surprises you. You sit up slowly and reach for your satchel. There, tucked between your whetstone and your spare tunic, is the tiny household god. Just a sliver of carved olive wood, barely shaped, just a suggestion of a figure. It belonged to your grandmother, or so your mother said. You've carried it since your first march. You place it in your palm, press it to your forehead briefly, then return it to its cloth wrap. It's not official. It's not prescribed. But it's yours. Religion in the Legion is complicated. Officially, there are the state gods, Jupiter, Mars, Minerva, Juno, and the rest of the noble pantheon. Temples in every city. Priests in white robes. Rituals and sacrifices conducted with grand ceremony and perfect Latin pronunciation. The empire runs on it, or so they say. But here, out in the provinces, where temples are days away and the nearest priest is likely more drunk than divine, religion becomes personal. Intimate. Maybe even a little strange. You and your brothers worship in your own ways. The camp has its morning rituals, of course. Small, habitual acts carried out without much fanfare. The signum, your unit standard, is always placed upright at dawn. Some men bow to it. Others touch it as they pass. It's not just a marker, it's the heart of your cohort. To lose it in battle is unthinkable. To dishonor it worse. There's also the sacrum main, the morning sacredness. Not an official name, just what the older soldiers call it. It's the moment after waking, before breakfast, when everyone seems to move more slowly. Like the day isn't real yet. Like the world hasn't quite remembered it's a battlefield. Some light incense from their kits. Others whisper to the sky, or mutter a charm while tightening their sandals. Your neighbor always flicks a drop of water from his canteen before drinking. For the river gods, he says. He's from Dalmatia, where the rivers are wild and said to have tempers. You've seen him do it even when there's no one watching. That's how you know it's sincere. Another man carries a small coin tucked into the sole of his boot. Not for luck, he claims. For Sharon, he explains. Just in case. You never tease him. You carry your own, just-in-case, items, after all. There's a rhythm to these beliefs. Like heartbeat and breath. No one forces it. The centurion doesn't march around demanding prayers. But you notice it in the quiet moments, the way men look at the stars, or how they fall silent when thunder rolls unexpectedly. You've seen men cross themselves with gestures that aren't Roman, not quite. Traces of old tribal rites, local spirits, family gods. Historians still argue whether Roman soldiers truly practiced a unified religion, or if the legions were more like patchworks of private beliefs held together by ritual and repetition. Some argue the standard rituals, like sacrificing before battle or swearing oaths to Mars, kept the empire spiritually cohesive. Others claim soldiers were fiercely independent in their beliefs, and that superstition often mattered more than dogma. From your place, kneeling beside the embers of last night's fire, it all feels true. You remember a campaign 2 years ago, marching through the forests of northern Gaul. Trees so tall they blocked out the sun. The locals there worshipped strange gods, horned, faceless things. You passed ruined altars carved into living trees. The centurion forbade any interaction, but you saw one of your men leave an offering anyway. A strip of dried meat, a broken pendant, and a few whispered words. He was from that region. He never said a word about it. The next day, your flank was ambushed. Only that man survived. He never spoke of the altar again. You remember, too, the Legion chaplain. Not quite a priest. More like an administrator of the divine. He held formal rites before major marches, sacrificing a goat, sprinkling wine, reciting oaths in the name of Mars and Fortuna. His voice always wavered on the last lines. You liked him. Not because he inspired faith, but because he was honest about doubt. One night, you caught him rubbing his temples beside a fading fire. Do you believe it all? You asked. He paused, then smiled. I believe it enough. That's how it is for most of you. You believe it enough. Before meals, someone always mumbles thanks, not always to the same deity. Sometimes to Ceres, goddess of grain. Sometimes to Bona Dea, if the food came from home. Sometimes just a nod skyward, silent and tired. Before battle, though, religion sharpens. Suddenly everyone's muttering. Coins are kissed. Charms gripped. Hands touch earth. You've seen men tattoo symbols onto their arms in the night before a siege. One fellow claimed his tattoo kept arrows from piercing him. He died from a spear. The rest of you didn't say anything. There's a ceremony for taking the auspices, watching birds, interpreting flight patterns, reading signs in the entrails of chickens. It sounds ridiculous until you've seen your commander change course entirely because a raven flew the wrong direction. Ritual has power, even if only because you believe it does. You think of your mother's prayers, always to Vesta, guardian of the hearth. You were never religious as a child. But now, on the edge of the empire, every flicker of smoke and whisper of wind feels like a message. You found yourself murmuring her prayer more often these days. Light within, light without, warm the path and bring me out. Your tent mate, a wiry man from somewhere near the Tiber, tells you stories sometimes. About Lars, the guardian spirits of households. About the Manes, the dead who linger. He claims he once saw a shadow sit down beside him during a lightning storm. He offered it wine. It left. He says the cup was half empty afterward. You're not sure if he's lying or mad. But he hasn't had a cold since, so you say nothing. Some men keep tiny lararia, little shrines tucked into the corners of their storage chests. Bits of cloth, broken figurines, twigs tied in sacred shapes. They whisper to them before sleeping. You never ask what they say. Some things are too personal. At night, when sleep is far and thoughts grow too loud, you sometimes hum a lullaby from childhood. It's nonsense, mostly. Old country words, jumbled melodies. But it calms you. Makes you feel like the stars are watching. Not judging. Just noticing. Your beliefs aren't perfect. They shift. Like sand underfoot. But they're yours. And that's enough. Tonight, you light a scrap of oil-soaked rag, just a sliver, and hold it close to your little wooden god. You whisper nothing. Just sit. The flame dances. Smoke curls upward. Somewhere, an owl calls. You stare into the flickering light until it goes out. Then you lie back. The ground is cold. But your chest feels warm. You don't know what waits in the next valley. Another march. Another skirmish. Another nameless hill to climb. But for now, here, in this small space between breath and dream, you feel something close to peace. You breathe in. You breathe out. And you sleep. You think the worst part of being a Legionnaire is the battle. But it's not. It's the march. Endless. Dust-choked. Boot-chafed. A grind that eats up the hours and leaves your feet screaming for mercy. From sunup to sundown, sometimes longer, over hills, across rivers, through forests thick with gnats and valleys that echo every curse muttered under breath. Your pack is heavy. Your gear clinks with each step. Your water tastes like old tin. Your feet, gods, your feet, feel like boiled leather after just a few miles. And there are always more miles. The only thing that makes it bearable, the only thing, is the sound of your brothers beside you. It starts small. A muttered phrase. A crude rhyme. A fragment of some old marching song that's been passed down from cohort to cohort like a sacred relic, worn smooth from use. No one knows who wrote it. No one cares. All that matters is that it keeps the rhythm. Left. Right. Left. Right. Raise your knees, lads, don't drag him like dead men. You hear that one every day. Sometimes the optio leads the chant. Other times it's just one of you, taking initiative. The call goes up in a cracked, hoarse voice. Who left Rome with shoes so fine? The reply rolls like thunder behind you. Now has blisters line by line. Who still dreams of figs and wine? Give him water, he'll be fine. It's dumb. It's childish. It's the only thing keeping you from weeping into your shield. There's a strange magic in shared suffering. A kind of ugly poetry in 100 voices grumbling in imperfect unison. You're not musicians. Most of you can't even carry a tune. But the rhythm is what matters. A steady cadence. Like breath. Like heartbeat. Like life. And then, of course, there are the jokes. Oh, the jokes. You've heard more bad puns than any man should be forced to endure in one lifetime. Roman humor is dry. Bone dry. But when you're trudging through mud, soaked to the bone, with a tunic clinging like seaweed to your thighs, humor becomes your armor. A favorite one-liner: 2 Gauls walk into a tavern. One leaves. The other can't hold his wine. It's terrible. It makes you snort every time. Another man swears he's going to start a bakery when he retires. Why a bakery, someone asks. So I can finally loaf around. He grins like he's invented comedy itself. There are bawdy songs, too, of course. Ones you'd never repeat near a priest or your mother. Tales of lovers in distant ports, of unfortunate encounters with goats, of centurions who snore like minotaurs. You laugh, not because the jokes are good, but because the laughter itself is a kind of relief. A release valve. A reminder that there's still some softness in the world. Some men are funnier than others. You know a fellow named Gaius, stocky, bald, with teeth like crooked tombstones, who could impersonate any officer in the legion with uncanny precision. You've watched hardened veterans collapse in tears of laughter as he mimics your legate's nasal voice ordering more flaming carrots, instead of flaming catapults. Even the centurion chuckled. Quietly, of course. There's another soldier, young and wiry, who never tells jokes himself but always laughs the hardest. His giggle is high-pitched and contagious. No one knows where he's from. You suspect he doesn't even know. But his laugh? That's pure Rome. Sometimes, when the march gets especially long, someone breaks out a song that's almost melodic. A slow, drawling ballad about a soldier who loved two sisters, neither of whom loved him back. It ends, as all such songs do, with the soldier marrying a horse. Don't ask. You sing it anyway. You sing because your legs ache, your back is one stiff knot, and your morale is dangling by a thread. And somehow, that ridiculous tune about matrimonial equines gives you the strength to walk another mile. Historians still argue about what legionary songs actually sounded like. Few melodies survive. The lyrics we have are fragmented, crude, and sometimes contradictory. Some scholars think the songs served military cadence purposes. Others say they were primarily for morale. A few suspect they were half chant, half prayer, especially in foreign territory. You think they were survival tools. Each chorus pushes your boot forward. Each verse drowns out the voice in your head whispering, "You can't do this." That voice always returns. But the songs? The songs return louder. Then there's the banter. You tease each other constantly. About your snoring. Your weird toes. Your irrational fear of frogs. Nothing is sacred. A man once tripped during formation, and for 2 weeks everyone called him Tumble Maximus. Another lost his sandal in the latrine pit and became the one-footed oracle. Humiliation is temporary. Nicknames are eternal. But behind the mockery, there's something deeper. A bond. Forged in sweat and grime and sleepless nights. You've shared tents with these men. Shared wounds. Shared the same strip of dried meat for dinner when supplies ran low. You've held their shoulders while they vomited after bad wine. You've held their hands as they bled out on the field, whispering nonsense words to keep them tethered a few moments longer. No one understands you like these men do. Not your family. Not your commander. Not the gods. Just them. When one of you gets injured, the others carry his pack without complaint. When one of you receives bad news, the others silently pass their own rations toward him. When one of you falls asleep during watch, you cover for him, and wake him just in time. It's not spoken. Never formalized. But it's there. Thick and unbreakable. You remember a storm once, while camped near a mountain pass. Rain like knives. Wind that bent tents sideways. Everyone soaked, shivering, teeth clattering like dice in a cup. One man, your friend from Hispania, started singing. Loudly. Off-key. A song about sausages. You all joined in, of course. Because why not? You sang until the storm faded. Or maybe it didn't. Maybe you just stopped caring. Brotherhood, in the Legion, isn't declared. It's worn. In bruises. In private jokes. In the unspoken agreement that if one of you dies, the others will carry his name like a shield for the rest of the march. You don't know what waits in tomorrow's valley. But you know who will be beside you. That's what matters. When the march finally ends each day, when the fires are lit and the socks are wrung out, you sit together. You pass around what little wine you have. Someone retells a story you've all heard a dozen times. You laugh anyway. You always will. There's comfort in repetition. There's peace in familiarity. You lean back, gaze up at the stars, and realize, you've never been this far from home. And yet you've never been less alone. The sky is bruising purple now, the last light of day pooling low on the horizon. You've eaten. You've laughed. Your feet are sore, and your shoulders feel like someone poured lead into them. But your day, as always, isn't quite done. Every night in the Roman Legion ends the same way, with order. There's comfort in routine. In the slow winding down of movement. You rise from the fire, brush the crumbs of barley bread from your tunic, and head for your assigned zone. Tonight, it's weapon check. You find your way to the tool tent, where a row of gladii and pila are racked like bones drying in the sun. Your own gladius is already beside your bedroll, but this check is broader. Every soldier cycles through gear watch now and then. Inventory. Cleaning. Repairs. Oil where oil is due. You run a cloth along the edge of a javelin, noting a hairline crack near the wooden shaft. That one will need replacing soon. A dull sword blade gets set aside for sharpening tomorrow. You don't speak. You just work. Quiet. Focused. The act is almost meditative. You know these tools like parts of your own body. The weight. The balance. The way a blade sings when it's drawn just right. Each one is a companion, a responsibility. You treat them as such. Next comes camp sweep, a polite term for picking up the scraps left behind by men too tired or lazy to care. Bits of charred wood, torn cloth, a discarded wine skin, someone's lost sandal, again. You toss them into the burn pile. Someone else will light it later. You pass by two men digging a shallow trench near the latrine. You nod. They nod back. No words. You all know the task. Even the most unpleasant duties are bearable when shared. Then comes the tent check. You duck back inside your leather hide shelter, simple, low, but dry. Your bedroll is where it should be. Your satchel tucked beneath your folded tunic. You kneel and inspect each strap, each buckle. There's not much to steal in a Roman camp, but carelessness invites problems. Especially out here. Your tent mate, the one with the laugh like a kettle boiling, is already stretched out, arms behind his head, humming something tuneless. Check your sandals, you mutter. I did. You always say that. He grins in the dark. And yet my feet remain unblistered. You toss a rag at him. Next to your gear sits a small bundle of oil and cloth. You unwind it slowly. Inside, your armor buckles. Your belt rings. Your wax tablet, wiped clean, ready for the next report. And the letter from home. You touch it briefly. Just once. You sit on your knees and begin wiping down your caligy, those heavy-soled marching boots, hobnailed and worn. Dirt flakes off in little clouds. You clean them with practiced indifference. A soldier's boots are more sacred than any temple. They carry you farther than prayers. Outside, someone blows softly into a bone flute. The tune is almost mournful. Almost. You finish with your boots, rewrap them, and set them aside. Next, your skin. You pull off your tunic, wiping your arms and neck with a scrap of damp linen. It's not a bath, but it helps. You dab your armpits, behind your ears, between your toes. It's funny how fast you get used to being half clean. You remember the last proper bath, weeks ago, in a village spa with cracked tiles and warm water that smelled like old lemons. You almost wept. Now, a rag and a bit of soap root is luxury. You lie down slowly, easing onto your side. You draw the blanket up to your chest and exhale. You're not quite ready to sleep yet. You never are. There's a gap. A space between action and rest. A soft pause. You let your mind drift. You think of tomorrow's route, 20 miles, maybe. Through the hills, if the scouts were right. That means early rise. Maybe cold bread. Maybe not. You think of home, briefly. Not enough to ache. Just a flicker. You reach into your tunic and retrieve the tiny wooden charm. It rests in your palm, warm from your body. You whisper something. Not a prayer, not exactly. Just a word. Maybe a name. Then you slip it beneath your blanket, next to your heart. The sounds around you begin to slow. The flute stops. The footsteps fade. Even the snoring dulls into background music. Someone outside calls a soft, all secure, and a few scattered voices answer back. The camp, at last, has settled. And now, finally, so do you. You pull the blanket higher. Curl your knees slightly. Let your spine soften. Your eyes blink slower. The last thing you see is the dull curve of the tent roof above you. Then, nothing. And now, you dream of quiet things. Of open fields in spring, the grass rising up in waves beneath a gentle breeze. Of fig trees swaying in drowsy rhythm. Of your younger self, barefoot, chasing goats and never once thinking of swords, of borders, or of empires. But before dreams pull you fully under, there's one last duty, memory. You lie there, your eyes half-lidded, and replay the day. Not just today, but all the days like it. The dust-covered mornings. The laughter by firelight. The stink of oil on leather, the creak of armor straps, the slosh of wine in a dented cup. These aren't grand victories or epic battles carved into marble, they're small, forgettable moments, and yet they're the ones you return to. You think of the man who once sat where you're lying now. He died in Gaul, 3 winters ago. Stepped on a spike hidden in the snow. You'd shared rations with him. Heard him snore like a wild boar. You still remember the way he whistled while sharpening his blade, like he wasn't afraid of anything. You never told him how much that calmed you. It's too late now. You think of the young recruit who asked too many questions. He's a veteran now. Doesn't talk much these days, but he listens better than anyone else. You've seen him sneak bread to wounded men when the rations ran short. A quiet kind of loyalty. You think of your commander, the one everyone feared. Harsh, loud, impossible to please. Until that night he gave you his own cloak when your gear went missing. Said nothing. Just draped it over your shoulders and walked away. You never forgot that. In the Legion, no one ever says thank you out loud. You say it in other ways. In how you tighten each other's straps. In how you pass the water without being asked. In how you sit shoulder to shoulder during the coldest watches, pretending it's not so bad. Your eyes drift toward the tent flap, where a sliver of moonlight spills across the ground. You've seen that moon from mountains and swamps, deserts and riversides. It's always the same. Pale. Steady. Quiet. Like the gods are reminding you, the world is vast, and you are very, very small. But that's okay. Because for all its size, the world still holds your footprints. Your stories. Your laughter. The hum of your voice carried over miles of open road, mingling with the voices of thousands like you, forgotten in scrolls, perhaps, but not in spirit. Tomorrow, you'll march again. The gear will chafe again. The sun will rise again. But tonight, all of that can wait. You adjust the blanket one last time, tucking it under your shoulder. Your breathing evens. Your heart slows. Somewhere outside, a fox rustles through brush. A shield falls with a quiet thud, startling no one. The camp breathes as one. And beneath it all, beneath the noise, beneath the dust and duty and discipline, you are human. Tired. Flawed. Hopeful. Alive. You think of one last thing, a face. It could be your mother's, your child's, or someone who kissed your forehead once and promised they'd wait. You picture that face as sleep finally claims you. And this time, you smile. Word count, approximate 2,710. Wind down, 300 words. Now that the fire has dimmed, and your armor rests beside you like a sleeping dog, your body begins to remember stillness. The ache in your shoulders becomes distant. The weight in your legs slowly unknots. Every sound. The breeze brushing the canvas, the quiet shifting of a nearby friend, softens into something you no longer notice. There's no battle tonight. No marching orders. No loud commands or clinking shields. Only the rhythm of breath. The slow, Steady comfort of being surrounded by others who have endured the same long day. You imagine your chest rising and falling like the sea. Gently. Predictably. The warmth of the blanket against your skin. The ground, uneven but familiar, holding you up like the arms of an old friend. Outside, the stars have claimed the sky once more. The same stars you marched beneath this morning. The same stars you'll wake beneath tomorrow. Constant, patient, watching. Maybe Mars watches you. Maybe not. But tonight, you are here. You are safe. And sleep, that most elusive gift, begins to creep into your limbs, your fingers, the corners of your mind. Let it. Let the day dissolve like old dust. Let the memory of sore feet and rough bread slip away. Let your name be spoken only in dream. And if, as you sleep, you feel a breeze drift through your tent like a whispered lullaby from the gods, don't worry. It's just the night, tucking you in. Rest now, Legionnaire.